Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have another very special episode with a special guest. But before we introduce our guest, I just want to give a shout out to our co-host, Corinne French.
So glad to be here. I heard the topic that we're going to discuss today is one of my favorites. I'll let you go with it, but oh my gosh, I cannot wait for the next few minutes. So you got to stay tuned for the rest of this because we're going to touch on one of my favorite topics.
Absolutely. And with us today, we have a very special guest. We have Superintendent of College Station ISD, and that is a very special place to me. Being an Aggie, College Station is just a special place. If you've never been, you should go visit. But we have Superintendent, College Station ISD, Mike Martindale. Superintendent Martindale, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Gary, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. And so we were talking a little bit about, before the podcast started, about leadership development. And it sounds like there's some interesting things that you guys are doing over at College Station ISD. But before we jump into that, tell us a little bit about your background.
All right, excellent, very good. Hey, I was actually doing a little calculation a week or two ago, and I believe I'm in year 32 actually total. I know time flies when you're having fun. So year 32. I began the early stages of my career as a math teacher at Angleton High School. That's down in Brazoria County, south of Houston. I was down there for some time, had the opportunity to be an assistant principal, kind of worked my way up through building administration, through elementary school principal, high school principal, and then ultimately central office. A number of different opportunities. There in Angleton, I've worked in Barbers Hill ISD, just east of Houston, Florence ISD in Central Texas. I landed in College Station in 2007. Moved here, 14 years ago as principal at Rock Prairie Elementary School. Did that for about 4 years. We were experiencing significant growth here in College Station, 6-7% enrollment growth through the course of several years. So the district went through a comprehensive planning process and opened a second comprehensive high school in College Station High School. And so I had the opportunity to be the inaugural principal for that building. So spent several years preparing to open that campus and was principal there for 4 before I slid over to central office as the chief financial officer and deputy superintendent, which I did from 2016. Named loan finalist for superintendent job. Let's see, right about when the pandemic started. So March 2020. So I've been a superintendent here for the last several years. Had the dubious honor of dealing with the pandemic and ice storms and everything, yes. But we have an excellent team, a very supportive community. Of course, anyone familiar with College Station, with the university here, the community values education, and with that there's tremendous support, but also tremendous expectations. So yeah, I've been here 14 years, have a very good team, and something I alluded to and I mentioned to both of you, something we're really pressing on the last couple of years is cultivating leadership within our system, identifying leadership and then being systematic about growing it. The most impactful person in a system, in the education in a district, is the teacher. They're number one. They have the greatest influence on student learning. The second is campus level administration. So recognizing that, we have tremendous work in cultivating our campus leadership. Again, identifying those folks, getting them in the pipeline, identifying competencies for each particular level so we can intentionally grow those areas for folks. So that's what we really has been an emphasis for us the last couple of years. Did some strategic planning through the course of last year. We've always had really strong school district, but the strategic plan, which is something the district hasn't done in many years, I think just kind of aligned us in a common direction. So it took all those extra efforts and that strength that we had and pointed it in one direction. So The leadership development piece fits nicely into that work because there are a number of our goals in our strategic plan, obviously, that have to do with student performance.
Got it. Got it. And Superintendent Martindale, tell us a little bit more about, so the leadership can be obviously looked at from different directions. You have mindset, you have tactical items, you have having the right culture. What specifically are y'all focused on related to that leadership development?
We're really, so what we, it was a priority, and we had a number of different leadership institutes within our district several years ago, from teacher leadership to aspiring administrators to principals that aspire to central office. But we had a number of different academies that we were really lining up and getting going. And again, it was really academies. There were application processes. So we try to go through a process of identifying future talent. And then those particular academies had focus points, leadership skills, communication skills, all the big pieces that are vital for an effective leader. We were doing that work and then had the opportunity really to become a part of a new program with the Holdsworth Center out of Lake Austin that Charles Butt really invested in. It's really one of his initiatives and his investment in public education. So we had an opportunity to interview and go through the selection process with them, and we were selected in 2 different programs actually, and they're both new. They're 18-month long programs. One is just a leadership collaborative program. So there are, I believe, 13 or 14 school districts throughout the state that are a part of this, us along with a number of our other colleagues, Conroe, Tomball, Eanes ISD. There's a number of them, and each district has a 3-person team that meets once a month there at Holdsworth and really goes through, how can an organization or a system be intentional about the qualities needed for different leadership steps, and how do you prepare people for the next step? You don't just say, okay, here's the advancement and good luck and learn the new skill set for the new responsibilities you have, but how can you be intentional about positioning them to continue to grow even as they move through the system with different opportunities, and to where they're not having to tap into the same skill set maybe that got them the first opportunity, but really growing and making their leadership skills more comprehensive as they become responsible for more and more people, so to speak. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I have so many questions, so I want to make sure I get mine in, because I know we probably want to have you back again to talk more about this program. But you mentioned something that what might have got them to one space in their leadership might not get them to the next. Do you have a tip or something that you can share that you noticed that's happening? But before you answer that, I want to also thank you for 32 years in public education. I'm on the school board, and I know it's really difficult. I've served 10 years on this board, and then I work in education at the higher education level. And so I just want to thank you, because I think sometimes it's a thankless job and we just assume that you're going to be there and assume you're going to be kind to our students. And I love that you said our teachers, that's our best. They're our best hope, our best. They're the most important person. So thank you for doing that work. But what have you noticed that is the step between what got a teacher and what has maybe created their level of success in one space, but then what they might be missing in that next space? Is there something, a few things you've identified or can share or point to?
Well, so what we're in the process of doing or identifying the protocol at each particular level, the proficiencies at each particular level of leadership within our organization. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we'll have particular proficiencies identified for an assistant principal. Then particular proficiencies that we value as a principal, and so on and so forth. And what is commonly really referred to as a principal pipeline, right? So you want to cultivate the principals you have, you want to cultivate the assistant principals and the teacher leaders, and have a way of identifying the future talent, but then growing it as well. So what we have learned, and also, this is a part of the work with Holdsworth, as we have a leadership collaborative team with them I'm also in a superintendent leadership collaborative with Holdsworth. So we're running parallel in 2 new programs with him. But what often happens is people transition through different leadership roles is, of course, they have their strengths that they carry with them. But what we found is there's been no intentional effort to help them improve upon their weaknesses. So as they transition to a new leadership role, they continually refer back to, obviously, the strengths that have worked for them. Those strengths might not necessarily transition to their new responsibilities in their role. So I think being very cognizant and aware of what is needed at that level, so as people receive those opportunities, you can support them. You know, I think the biggest piece of all of this is the coaching or the mentoring. So you have to be intentional and you have to carve time out for that as well. Something that we had begun to do that didn't exist before, our executive leadership team there in the district, we meet every week, which is not uncommon. We have a comprehensive meeting every week to talk about various things occurring throughout the district and strategize and plan forward. But something we built into that hasn't been there before is a professional development piece just for the executive leadership team. You know, what are we doing to grow one another? What conversations are we having to improve upon our weak spots? You know, I think any leader, you know what your strengths are, but even more important is know what your weaknesses are and embrace those and be willing to work on those. And I think when you build a team and think of leadership as well, you need to make sure you surround yourself with people not like you. You don't need a lot of people just like you. You need people that have different skill sets, because ultimately they'll learn from one another and they make a stronger team, which at the end of the day makes for a stronger district. So really just identifying the competencies at each level and coaching people through those as you identify their skill set, being intentional about it. That's the secret, is having it as a part of your system.
Oh, that's excellent. So I have one more question. I know Gary's looking at me like, wait, who's going to ask the next question? So is that PD when you're doing some of the intentional work weekly in those meetings? Is it bite-sized? Is it like an hour, 25 minutes? And then do you share those responsibilities? So, you know, different principals might work on some of that. I mean, can you just like quickly tell us what that looks like, what that PD looks like?
Well, we've done 2 different. So with our principals, we changed to collaborative sessions. We used to have everyone come together, you know, once a month, 3 hours, so on and so forth. We have separated out the logistical and mechanical administrative piece of those meetings, and we do those on a Zoom now. Now we do collaborative sessions where we pull principals together from each level, and the entirety of the session has to do with professional development. And we have a design team of principals that help. We sit with each month to plan out what the needs are so that we can have focus in those particular areas each month. So what it's helped us do is show our team that our focus is leadership development, because we've separated that time out away from all the administrative that would occur otherwise. As far as our executive team, that's the central office leadership team. We commit about 30 minutes a week to that. And really what we're doing is we're working our way through, it really is taking the shape of a book study that parallels what the collaborative leadership team's doing with Holdsworth, so that all the work is synced up. Lots of different moving pieces. I think what I'm most proud of on this is it's all intentional. The stronger the leadership base you have, so stronger your leadership is, your campus principal or your assistant principals, they're going to impact the culture and climate of your campus, of which your teachers and your students feed off of. If you don't have strong leadership at the campus level, it will have a negative impact on what you're trying to accomplish in the classroom. So I think recognizing that value, and again, creating an opportunity for dialogue. The coaching and mentoring is huge too in the conversation. You have to work to create the space, the safe space for people to open up and be willing to discuss their weaknesses, right? And not feel judged. So the environment is important as well.
Yeah, that kind of leads into my next question, Superintendent Martindale. So it sounds like there's a lot going on right now from a professional development standpoint and a leadership standpoint in different levels of the district, which is awesome, right? That sort of investment in your people and them and themselves from a personal growth standpoint is just, it's very exciting. And so have you seen some, I know it's pretty early on, at least from some of the training, it sounds like, have you seen some fruits of that investment so far, the results in your district so far?
Absolutely. You know what it does when you're investing in your people, they see that you value them, and so quite honestly, it makes they are even more committed to the effort because you have placed emphasis on their growth, right? So if we each as an individual feel valued, then we're more committed to the effort of the entirety of the organization. So just simply, I think the climate change and what also occurs is the level of expectation and accountability, just as it naturally follows that. So there's a sense of accountability that's been elevated, not because of us issuing directives or anything else, but simply because people know we value them. And so they want to perform at a higher level to show their appreciation and commitment to what the district and the commitment to the kids and the campus. So I think when you invest in others, then you get that payback because they feel valued and they feel like they have ownership. So they want to work harder to support the movement of the district and the organization and perform well. So it's a cycle, right? So it's all interconnected. So yes, we absolutely have seen the benefits. And I will tell you, when we've gone through one or two process to name some campus administrators just as soon as or just as at last winter break, we open up all of our searches to external candidates, and it gives you a good gauge as to how you're preparing your internal people when you get to visit with others from outside. Because I'm going to hire the best candidate. To me, it doesn't matter if they're internal or external. I'm going to hire the candidate that fits for our circumstances and the need for that department or that campus. And you can kind of see the fruits of the work of what we've invested in some of our beginning administrators because they will excel and honestly elevate themselves through the interview process.
Wow, very exciting. I mean, I would say out of all of our guests that we've had on the podcast, the amount of investment in professional development that you are doing, it definitely stands out. Now, I know we're running short on time, and before we close out, Corinne, did you want to ask a final question, or you want me to ask?
Oh, I have like 15. So Superintendent Martindale, I would love to have you back on maybe in a few months, because what you mentioned, there was already the acceptance of leadership and already the acceptance of education in your community because you are part of that community. I don't have a degree from so I have like some every now and then there's envy, when you don't get to be part of that university, but because it's already there. I love that you said that there's this importance of then it just needs to be excellent. So do you have a tip of ways for us to move forward post-pandemic just to be more excellent, just a general like dream or a wish for public educators to push that excellence into the next step? Not everyone can be part of the Whole Center. For districts like mine, I went to Leadership TASB that helped me become more excellent, but just general tip or a book or just some advice, something for your advice in general.
And I think the key question, and what I often ask my team is, you have to have an authentic ability to reflect on your work. And you have to be willing to ask yourself the question, is there more we can do? And really, I mean, it sounds oversimplified, but that's the question. Is there more? Is what we're doing really all that we can do? And maybe why the current work that we're doing, why are we doing it this way? Is it because it's always been done that way? Is it really the best way to serve our students and our community? You know, I think it's vital for leaders to create a supportive environment that values the other leaders, places emphasis on growth, and encourages risk taking. You know, I'm okay with mistakes if the mistake was grounded in what you thought was best for serving the students. You know, so how are you going to ever be better if you don't attempt new things? So I think you have to create that environment. And truly, again, it's difficult sometimes for people to reflect and go, these are the things I'm not good at. What can I do to work on these things? And these are the things we are good at. So how do I continue to grow that? Or how do I take that strength and maybe share and mentor others? So you have to really
That's
foster
powerful.
that. You really have
Yeah.
to foster that environment. You have to, and it doesn't come easy. Others have to trust you. So you have to walk the walk. You have to hold yourself accountable. And you have to be honest with yourself as a leader. So I think just the ability to reflect and truly ask yourself about how you're currently doing things, and then where are areas that you can possibly improve, and encourage risk taking, calculated and strategic risk taking, not simply risk taking for the fact of taking risk, but strategic and calculated that could possibly provide a yield to benefit students. And again, all those variables tie together. So we're very fortunate here. Like I said, there's tremendous expectation and support. There's tremendous support, and with that becomes tremendous expectation. So I'm very fortunate to have a strong team, but we've been intentional about designing that team.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think that you're worried about authentic ability to reflect on our work, and then the calculated risk taking. I mean, that works for boards. It works for a teacher in the classroom. It works for a strategic leadership team. It works for business. It works for anyone listening, that authentic ability to reflect on our work. So thank you so much, Superintendent Martindale. This is very powerful and it's helpful to me.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I didn't say earlier, but hey, thank you for your service as a board member. You know, it's not, there have been times filled with opportunity the last year or two for ISD employees, but school boards as well. And school districts accomplish nothing without the team of 8 working well together and supporting each other and being on the same page. So while those things don't happen without folks like you serving in your capacity. So I want to make sure and thank you as well, because again, the team of 8, right, sets the stage and the environment for the rest of the school district. So thank you for what you do and those hefty paychecks you get from the board members, right?
Thank you. I know I get a free meal once a month. And,
exactly.
It's a nice meal. Oh, it's a great meal.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Amen to that. And Superintendent Martindale, thank you again for being on the podcast. And before we close out, just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact is providing funding to school districts. They're using technology to do that. So far, they provided $1.5 billion to public education and ministries around Texas, and it doesn't cost the districts or the churches anything to receive. It's provided in the form of a free gift. Faith-based company, Ideal Impact. If you want more information, go to www.idealimpactinc.com, and I'll have the website in the description as well. And for those of you all that have been tuning in, stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.